It's a privilege, I have to say, to be able to address you. This is the first opportunity with the media in the Western Cape and our national media as well. And my first opportunity as Rector and Vice-Chancellor um, to hear from you and also to share with you some thoughts I have on taking the university forward. It's also an enormous honor, I think, to be in this place at this time. UWC is a wonderful institution with a legacy that is really, on many levels, inspirational for our national society. It speaks to a legacy of diversity, of struggle that has also inspired resilience in our communities. It speaks to a history about inclusion, about being important for the most marginal and the unseen of our people. And so that legacy is one that I would like very much to build on in coming years. This emphasis on hope and transformation is, of course, a deliberate one. It is also a uniquely UWC focus. And if we think about the institution, it has always been, in my mind, and I think in many of our alumni and our students and staff's minds and heart, a place of freedom. Freedom intellectually, but also freedom that contributes to a very clear understanding of what social justice must mean in a country like ours going forward. So it's inspirational for me to be here. And I see it as a chance in my professional life, but also my personal life, to contribute to a place that has always signaled, in many ways for me as a young academic and young professional, signaled such hope about the possibilities for inclusion, transformation, and particular to UWC, how those come together in relation to activism and community work. We often hear about UWC being the intellectual home of the democratic left. I think it was a phrase coined by one of our previous rectors, Prof. Hadvel, whose work I know personally, by the way, being a linguist and starting my career in the early 2000s. Some of you might reference the Hadvel report, which was all about the role of language in higher education institutions. And you may also recall that there was such an important and lively debate between Prof. Hadvel and that Hadvel report and Neville Alexander, who is also a major figure in this region and one of the great and influential thinkers around language policy and language planning. So as a linguist coming to UWC in many ways from that tradition, that aspect, this also feels very much like home. It feels like a place where my intellectual interests can find their environment. We're an institution that pride ourselves on being research-led and responsive to the needs of a changing world through excellence in teaching, learning, and research. And of course, in that way, we are not unlike every other South African institution which must aspire to excellence, which must set the standards really high in terms of the national contribution that we make to the transformation of our country. But I think what situates UWC particularly well in this regard is precisely that powerful legacy of a commitment to change of society. It's a legacy that we speak about being relevant in the past. You know, we talk about UWC's commitment to the struggle, to the many great figures that have come into leadership from UWC, into government and other areas of our work in the country, and whose influence continues to be really felt, I have to say. So in this institution, with this special place and the special environment and special legacy, I think we have an especially important role to fulfill nationally going forward. And I think the opportunity of being Vice-Chancellor and Rector at this time is what I refer to sometimes as a happy stance. For me, it is a coming together of much of my own intellectual work and experience in an environment which I find attractive and which I have been very warmly welcomed by both our students and our staff and our communities in a way that suggests we can do great things together. So I am so looking forward So the opportunity of unlocking, that potential for UWC with our communities and our stakeholders at the institution. Some of you might be aware that I've worked not only in linguistics, but also in the area of literary and political studies. And there is a book about Jabulani Mzala Nxumalo, which I would like to reference with you, because there are few intellectual figures whose history of development in our country has been on the margins of universities traditionally. And I think the replacement of the intellectual contribution of African intellectuals, particularly, but more broadly speaking, post-colonial intellectual traditions into this environment has got to be deliberate and intentional going forward. Nxumalo's philosophy reminds us that education is a powerful tool to confront narrow forms of nationalism, to confront what I sometimes refer to as an unaccountable capitalism, and to also engage with the changes that we still are working in realizing in our country, South Africa. So although that work from the intellectual perspective is part of my understanding of why I believe the curriculum at UWC can change and can still be relevant for our country. Of course, I recognize that it's within a broad environment of sectoral change and social change and economic change in South Africa. So it's a timely happenstance or happy stance to come back to that word that I used earlier. In assuming office and looking to the future, I view UWC's Vision 2025 as an important roadmap. We aim to be recognized as a leading research-led university, known for the synergy between our undergraduate and our postgraduate programs and our research impact. It's interesting to reference back to that Neville Alexander debate, that one of the areas that was discussed by these powerful intellectual figures was about the role of community and higher education, how community links with higher education. And both of them contested the relationship between the university and the role of the university and community. And in my thinking, we should, in rethinking the curriculum, I have to say, at UWC, rethink what it means to be engaged with communities, to be in communities, to be not only located in a place, but also living in a space. So I talk about these concepts, three concepts that come together a lot in my discourse around community, and it's around place, space, and circumstance. And UWC, of course, from its origins, was placed as an institution at the margins. And it was meant to serve a very narrow understanding of what community could mean. And it was also meant to serve a particular understanding of community in a particularly racially framed time. So that placement, space, place, and circumstance of the institution and its origins, I think is quite an important and galvanizing. It's a generative, it's an exciting concept to rethink the relevance of the institution and its agenda, its research agenda, its teaching agenda, and its community agenda going forward. It forms a virtual circle when we think about community, research, and teaching as part of the same whole. Because if we understand community to be central to the curriculum, rather than only the place in which we embody the curriculum, then rethinking that role of what community could mean from a transformative perspective for teaching, from a transformative perspective for our research, makes a lot of sense. And that's what I call the virtuous circle. Once you ignite the one area, it immediately has a virtuous connection to the other two areas of our work. So I would like to approach our curriculum transformation afresh and invite our institution and our stakeholders to rethink, to reimagine what that curriculum could mean within that virtuous circle, and to work with us as we take forward what Prof. Tyrone Pretorius' strategy had been for the institution, which was around anchoring the university in communities beyond Belleville. So us being here in this beautiful space today, in this particular area of Cape Town today, is also no accident. It's part of that anchoring strategy to make the university a properly city and regionally based institution that serves a wide range of communities. And in taking that legacy forward then from the curricular dimension, from the research dimension, it makes sense that community become part of our way of seeing the changes that I want to bring. Now, to achieve that, all those many beautiful words, to achieve it, of course, takes a very powerful series of courageous conversations around place, space, circumstance, and our purpose as institution. And I think if we engage in those conversations with our students and also our alumni and our stakeholders, our donors, the many, many people who support the institution, our wonderful academics and our staff, we will find a wealth of bright and new ideas, a wealth of knowledge that can be re-envisioned, reimagined for the institution going forward. And I hope that in talking to you about it this morning, that you're also enthused by this idea, that you're also excited and galvanized by the idea of this journey for reimagining the UWC for our future, our collective future. And it's not our collective future in the regional sense, I have to say, colleagues, it's also our collective future in the national sense. This is an institution whose role nationally has had such importance in affecting every aspect of our life and work. So all of that will come together in the next few years in terms of reimagining our strategy for the institution. And it is, as I said, a privilege, an honor, an enormously humbling experience to have the opportunity to contribute to that legacy which is special at UWC in this space and time together. Of course, there are, I have to say also, an enormously long list of challenges in the sector, not least of which have to do with the sustainability of our funding model, not least of which have to do with access to institutions across our nation. You may well be aware that with the marvelous success rates that have been declared with the grade 12 assessment and results coming out, that there is an especial pressure and a particular focus on higher education institutions and access to them, and balancing that focus with a commitment to providing a quality and innovative education for our students is what makes us so important as a part of the future of South Africa going forward. So this is the right time. It's the right place and circumstance to be rethinking the role of the institution, the purpose of its curriculum, its relevance, and so on. And it's in the context of those issues that I've outlined that we should do it. So in as much as we reach for the stars, we have to also keep our feet very much on the ground. I've touched on the historical dimension of why I think the legacy of UWC is important, but of course there are many matters that can be celebrated, many aspects of the university that can be celebrated in the here and now. If you think about the Saatchi Chair in Visual History and Theory, and this wonderful center where we are today, a very recent development. I think we were part of the inauguration of this center just towards the end of last year. Other important centers around religion and society, the Desmond Tutu Chair, for example, the university's Faculty of Economic and Management Sciences, and the Network of Excellence on Land Governance in Africa that has been set up called NELGA. We think about our role as UWC in the Square Kilometre Array. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, the list goes on in terms of how we have been at the forefront of science, how we have been at the forefront of social studies and humanities for many years. And so that legacy is about important academic foundations for us as an institution, which I'm confident about, in which I would like to also express to you today my confidence and excitement about working with as we go forward. So we are more than just a university. UWC is in many ways a movement. It's a place where knowledge meets action. And that was what I meant when we think about the history of activism. It's not only a past artifact. That history of struggle has become a commitment to activism in communities. And that activism is also what characterizes our work as academics and as students in our various disciplines and in our communities. So in our unrelenting fight against inequality, in our vision for a just society, we resonate as people gathered together today with that space, place, and circumstance that is special to the University of the Western Cape. And together with all our stakeholders, we will continue to address not only the systematic challenges affecting the nation, everything from poverty to unemployment and inequality and the environmental crisis that we are experiencing, but that we also do it through the lens of knowledge that has impact in action. And that is also drawn, by the way, from one of our previous rectors, from knowledge to action through. So I want to thank you in closing my remarks this morning. Thank you for being here. And thank you for being interested in the University of the Western Cape. And please continue to engage with us and to take an interest in our development and our growth as we go forward. This university means an enormous wealth for our communities in this region, and we count on your support and your ongoing endorsement of the institution to make for that success. Thank you very much.